Hello there, all of our friends who are into the automotive lifestyle, culture, and fun things with wheels. You've turned into a brand new
Sitzfleisch episode of V8 Radio, Kevin.
Sitzfleisch.
Does that sound familiar?
It does sound familiar.
Yeah. Where's that from?
You caught me moonlighting.
I did.
But I don't remember what it means.
I've been holding on to that word. It's the stubborn German word of the day, meaning someone who can sit patiently for a long time.
There you go.
It's kind of a loose interpretation, but that's the general gist of it.
Fantastic. Oh, man. Well, I'm Kevin Oeste, your host of the V8 Radio podcast and of the Stubborn German podcast, and joined as always by our esteemed co-host, Mr. Mike Clarke. And you dug deep into the alter ego of the Stubborn German cast to pull out the
I did.
Sitzfleisch. Very nice.
I am a listener.
Well, appreciate that. Well played. Yeah, that's a fun one because it's a podcast that has nothing to do with cars, and it's a totally different world for me where I'm actually kind of the co-host of that one with Chris Ron, who owns the Stubborn German Brewing Company, and it's about brewing beer, bourbon, but also local businesses and lots of fun stuff. So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I like that word because I think it's gonna factor into today's topic.
Yes, we need our listeners to sit patiently through the show also.
Yes, please. And thank you.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why they show up here is because of our world-renowned automotive trivia question.
Say that again.
Yes, the world-renowned automotive trivia question.
Oh, I love it.
And you know what's fun about the trivia question? I've learned that a lot of our listeners listen to this podcast while mowing the lawn.
Is that so?
It is so. So if you're on your lawnmower, either pushing it or riding it around, we welcome you to the show. And we're going to deal out some trivia questions. So have you prepared a trivia question?
Absolutely, sir. I have indeed.
Now, you have? Or have you been fed one?
This one, actually, I've been fed.
Mm-hmm.
You can thank our good friend, Mr. Trevor Spence, for this one.
Nice. Well, this is a quick shout out to Trevor for being with our shop for 10 years now.
And what better way to honor him than to use one of his trivia questions?
For sure.
All right. Here we go.
Hit me.
Kevin and Trevor, here we go. All right, Kev. What brand of car had the cylinders numbered starting from the firewall and moving forward?
That's a great question.
Thank you. Trevor thinks so, too.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. Thanks a lot, Trevor. You want to see another 10?
10 years?
Well, it's that kind of knowledge is why he's made it 10 years, for sure.
Yeah, man.
Typically, when you open the hood, especially on a V configuration engine, the cylinder that is closest to you is normally number 1. So this would be the opposite, putting the number 1 cylinder against the wall.
Correct.
Is it a 6-cylinder engine? Do we know that?
I will say it's a 4-cylinder engine.
It's a 4-cylinder. Mm-hmm. So, okay. There's jokes in there somewhere about something, but I'm not going to go there.
All right.
I'm going to say it's a Honda.
Ooh, Honda. All right, you care to guess the model?
That means I might be halfway right.
Well, I'm just giving you some opportunity here, pal.
All right. Sure, why not? We'll call it we'll say it was closest to the firewall. So that means it's longitudinal. So that doesn't mean it's a Honda anymore. Because those were like all front wheel drive.
Thank goodness you did not say final answer.
Yeah, see? Starting to wake up over here. All these cans of canned water are starting to kick in.
Canned water.
That's it, man.
Nice.
This one is called limoncello.
Ooh.
Yeah. Tastes like water.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. All right. So it's a longitudinal 4-cylinder. So that means it's either earlier because it's rear-wheel drive. Oh, man, I don't want to dwell on this forever, but...
It's okay. I can edit.
Yeah. Well, just for fun, because I don't really know. I'm going to say it was a product of Morris Garages. It was an MG.
Oh, MG.
And I'm going to say it was a 1275cc 4-cylinder as found in the MG midgets of the early 70s with a pair of twin SU dashpot carburetors.
Ooh, I like it. Okay. Is that your final answer, good sir?
That is.
All right. Very good. All right. I like that answer. That's a good one.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah.
All right.
So do we have the wheel of questions for me?
We do have the wheel of trivia once again. It is now more of a triangle.
Okay.
Because we have 3 remaining questions.
Oh, righteous.
So feel free to spin the isosceles, and I wish you luck, my friend.
You got it. Zing. All right.
Yeah.
We're going to have point number 2 on this one.
Okay, so I forgot to mention that it's number 4, 5, and 6.
Oh, point number 5.
Okay, it was the bottom end of the isosceles.
Okay.
And you, my friend, I'm sorry.
Oh, no. God dang.
Here we go.
Oh, Lord. Okay.
What is a Dutchman panel?
What is a Dutchman? Is that anything like a dashboard?
Well, it kind of is. I will say it's a, it's in the bodywork of a vehicle, of a car.
Okay. The Dutchman panel. Okay, that is the...
I will say your GTO has one.
Okay. That is the... It's the C-pillar area from the rear part of the side window to the back of the roof to where it meets the rear window. If that makes sense. So the area from the back of the side window to where it meets the rear window, edge of the rear window.
Okay, I was typing as you were talking.
Okay.
So here's what I got. The C-pillar area from the rear part of the side window to the back of the roof where it meets the rear window.
Yes.
So I don't know what that means, but if that's your answer,
Well,
I'll go with it.
hang on.
You're gonna show me.
We're having some visual here.
All right,
so
so I'm
like,
seeing a GTO and there's a C-pillar
Where
there.
the heck is it? Okay.
But yours is a hard top, so it's
So-
technically a B-pillar. But
So yeah, it is. So from this area to the back where it
Okay.
meets the rear window.
all right, so for an analogy on
Sorry.
the interior,
That was poor radio. I apologize.
it's okay.
Theater of the
You're-
mind, man. Theater of the
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. To help our listeners visualize, the interior corresponding piece would be the sail panel.
Yes, the sail panel.
Okay.
But I'm calling it the Dutchman panel.
Right on. For bonus points, do you have any
It came
reason?
from the Dutch.
It came from the Dutch. Well, thank the Dutch
Yeah.
for that.
Thank you, Dutchman.
Okay.
No heavens to
out.
Betsy. Oh, Kevin. I don't know where you find these.
I don't either. That one I'd actually heard, and in typical fashion, I was like, what's the deal with that? So I looked it up, and I thought, this might be a good question.
Great. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's happening, man? You've been busy.
I've been very busy. It's been good. It's an interesting time. We are now a year and a half into the whole pandemic thing.
Yes.
And earlier this year, everybody was charged up because it seemed like it was under control, and now it's kind of resurging and whatnot. But the thing that has affected us the most, I think, is this domino effect that is affecting everybody. And this is not new news to anyone, but things are taking a long time sometimes to get done.
Yes.
And it's aggravating. And it's aggravating to those who are making parts. It's aggravating to those who are ordering parts and installing them. And it's aggravating to customers. And quite frankly, it sucks. But I think it's interesting to explore a little bit about, kind of what the deal is on this, because in the world of car restoration, there have been delays for numerous reasons since the beginning of time.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
And, when things take a long time, yes, people they can get antsy, especially if they don't understand why these things are taking a long time. And the classic example is the term paint jail. My car's in paint jail.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's been in the body shop for 6 months or a year or 5 years or whatever. And, and it's a horrible thing. It's got a highly negative connotation. It's bad, right?
Yes.
And that generally comes from a lot of shops that are primarily collision shops, and they will take on some restoration work. And the term that I despise is as fill-in work.
Oh, I can see why you don't like that.
Well, it's a mess because any shop these days in particular, but most collision shops are pretty busy. They don't have a lot of downtime for fill-in work, right? And my limited experience with professional collision shops is when there is a department of the collision shop that is going slow, they maintain it. That's time to get the compressor rebuilt or change all the paint booth filters or whatever.
Sure.
So there's other things to do. And the real hindrance, if you take your classic to a collision shop, you have to understand that the collision shop makes their money from fixing wrecks, which are funded by insurance companies.
Yes, absolutely.
So what literally actually happens when a wreck shows up at a collision shop, the insurance company involved literally starts a stopwatch.
Oh my gosh.
Because every second counts. And if you are the customer and you wrecked your Hyundai accident or whatever it is.
Oh man. All right. Okay. All right.
They want that fixed as soon as possible because they're paying for a rental car for the customer. And
correct. Yeah, time is literally money.
It sure is. And I know people that own collision shops, and they tell me about this stopwatch. So as they use their electronic systems to work with the insurance company and the estimating software and everything, there's a clock ticking, the whole time.
Yep.
So what happens to your 67 GTO? It gets pushed to the side because there's no clock ticking on that. Right. And that's not their main line of work. So I get it. I understand why that happens. But this is where cars end up in paint jail because all of a sudden a big hailstorm came through and this body shop has 20 cars to do. And there's no time for the fill-in work. Right. So when we started our business, we intentionally don't do collision work. All we do is work on classics and muscle cars. Now, there have been a few that have been wrecked classics that we've worked on.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a different animal because most collision shops won't touch those. And that's not the primary mode of transportation for the customer, so they don't need a rental car, and that process can be kind of drawn out too. So that's the first thing. But there's other situations where when things start to take time, if they're not handled properly, customers are left with a bad taste in their mouth, and I've been there. I'm sure you have too. And the components of that are communication and availability of the people that are working on the car and all that stuff. But where we are today is, and I'm so sick of COVID. I know you are too. And I'm not blaming. I'm not a blamer. You know, I'm not the guy that's going to just, it's this guy's fault. But we owe so much, not all, but we owe quite a bit to COVID. And if you look at the analogy of the construction industry, now that we're a year out from this going down, and we can look back and see what actually happened there. So the construction industry realizes that, oh no, we were in this pandemic. Oh my gosh, the economy is shut down. People are not allowed to go to work. What does that mean? That means we are not going to get any business. So we got to lay everybody off.
Yep. So
they send everybody home. And not only the contractors, but the mills and the companies that are cutting the wood and all, everybody gets sent home. Well, the opposite came true. The demand went through the roof.
Yeah.
Right?
Everybody who is home is doing home projects.
For sure. You were one of them.
Yes, I was.
And you put a deck on your house. Mm-hmm. So now we were at a time period where these companies were way busy already. The economy was chugging along, doing well. There's plenty of work to do. They send home the workforce, and the plants send home the workforce that makes the raw materials, but the orders go up. So now they got to figure out how to catch up and go into high gear to satisfy the current and all these new orders, but then do it without the materials. So here comes delay number one.
Yes.
Then there is a legitimate portion of the workforce that got sick, and it's horrible.
Oh, correct.
So they're out, unfortunately. Then you have a big portion of the workforce that is not allowed to come back to work.
Yep.
Meanwhile, we're getting more orders, and it just compounding, right? So this huge mountain of work piles up with no real way to get it done. And we were in the same boat in many ways. We were fortunate that our shop was considered essential, so our guys could come to work. I had that same panic thought when the COVID hit that our shop was going to have to close because we were going to be no longer in demand for our services. The opposite happened. We had a very busy year. But when a customer comes to us in the before times, before the COVID,
right?
There's been a trend since day one where the scope of projects 99% of the time will grow when it reaches our shop. And there's reasons for that,
Well, sure.
So one example is somebody might say, hey, I want a fuel injection system on my 69 Camaro. Great. So we talk to the customer, figure out what they want. What are they going to do with it? What's the motor? Blah, blah, blah. Which system do you want? And by the time the car gets to the shop, we do our mandatory safety inspection, which I don't know if I ever told the story of how that came to be, but the safety inspection is something, it's a couple hours that we put into looking at every car that comes in. And we put it on a rack, and we look at hoses and leaks and brakes and bearings and steering linkages and, anything that could, fall off. We don't do diagnostic. We don't take things apart. This is purely an observational thing. And we fill out this big, long checklist, and we share those photos and that checklist with the customer and say, just so you know, this is what we found on your car. And some of it might need attention, some might not. But now you have a more complete picture of what this thing actually is. And almost 10 times out of 10, because these are 50-year-old cars, in some cases, some 75-year-old cars.
Yeah.
You'll find a bulging brake hose in the back. Oh, yeah, we'll take care of that, right? It's got to be safe.
Or a pinched hard brake line on a certain GTO.
That's right. You were there, right? Yeah. And especially when you're talking to a customer who wants to say, forget the fuel injection system. Say we're putting a supercharger on a car. So now we're going to add 150 horsepower to this thing, and the car comes in and it's on stock brakes, and the pads are worn out, and the hoses are shot, and the master's leaking. And okay, so we got to talk to the customer and say, look, And everything we do is on observation and recommendation. We don't just do it and send you a bill. I mean, we say, this is what we found.
Right.
Here's our opinion on what we think. And we can help prioritize, what's important and what's not. But if a guy's thinking about putting a, supercharger on the car, and all of a sudden we find that it's not going to stop the way it is, the next, more than just a repair of what's there, kicks in, and it's a term we call might as well syndrome.
Love it.
Right? Yeah. And that is, well, so my front brakes are shot and I need hoses. So, how about like we just put some wheel whip disc brakes on the car? While it's there, might as well. Right?
Might as well. Yeah.
We're putting all this power in it. It's got to stop. And tell me about those Hydro Boost things. Those are pretty cool. what would that take? Oh, it uses the power steering pump. Yeah, yours is leaking pretty bad. Well, I need a new one of them. All right. Okay, so now we're doing the supercharger, but we're also added brakes, hydraulics, the pump. And all of a sudden, the stock wheels don't fit on the car because the brakes have been upsized.
Oh, boy.
So, hey, Mr. Customer, just, the brakes that you want, that you want, essentially, don't fit behind the wheels. And this always goes the same way. We can find brakes that will fit inside the wheel. Nobody wants those. They always want, 13, 14 inch.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna do it. You're adding 100 horsepower to the
Hey,
car.
I saw those in the magazine. I want them brakes too, huh?
That's it. I was at the car show. My neighbor's got them. Whatever. My other car has them. So now we got to find some wheels, and the ordering process on custom wheels has always taken time.
Sure.
12.
Well, they got to make them, right?
Right.
There's a lead time,
6, 8 weeks, whatever. But it used to be that we could go to one of our suppliers and get the brakes in a week. We get a Hydro Boost systems generally take some time, but it's not forever. It's a couple of weeks, 3 weeks a month. And we could kind of go through the car and land on all those items and then get them all in and then do the work. And then boom. So the scope grows because a lot of people just don't consider the ramifications of the first thing they want to do.
They want all the cool go fast stuff, but don't consider the basics and the foundation of the vehicle, whether it can handle it or not.
Yeah, or if theirs is worn out or, whatever. And believe me, there are many cars that come in and the guy says, I got a dripping transmission seal, and we fix the seal and that's it. I mean, it's not, we're not here to push stuff onto people.
To upsell everybody every time they come in. Yeah.
Right, because the reality is we don't have to. We present and people go, oh, well, I want this stuff and this is not safe. So incidentally, the safety thing started because a guy brought us a car to do some work on it, and somebody did a disc brake swap and didn't put the clevis pin in the brake pedal.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and Trevor moved it in the shop and stepped on the brakes, and they went right to the floor, not even attached, and he rolled into the old paint booth door.
Oh, no.
And damaged the car. Well, luckily, we worked with Haggerty Insurance, and we were able to basically redo the whole car. The insurance paid for the damage in the front, and the customer said, well, while you're doing that, you might as well just repaint the whole car, right?
Heck yeah.
And we love that, but it added time and scope to the project.
Yeah.
It really freaked Trevor out. Luckily, nobody was hurt. But that spawned us to say, you know what, any car that comes in, we got to get eyeballs on this.
Yeah.
Because we don't know who worked on it last or if there's something wrong with it.
Funny thing about when a brake pedal goes to the floor, it actually feels like the car accelerates at that point. Because you're expecting it to slow down, and when it does, you're like, oh my God, I'm going faster.
Yeah, the opposite happens for sure.
Yeah.
So it used to be we could accommodate the might as wells and the unexpected repair items pretty quickly. But today, because the manufacturer can't get the materials to make the parts and can't find the workforce to assemble them once they've got the materials, and then can't ship them, and they're backlogged till last year anyway. When this type of thing happens, all of a sudden it has a huge impact on time.
Oh, yeah. It's going to have a huge domino effect for you guys.
It really does. Yeah. And there's a couple facets of the domino effect that we've learned about that are challenging to kind of wrap your mind around, and that is that we try to do everything as efficiently as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So the last thing we want to do is bring your GTO in and have you say, yeah, we're going to put a 5-speed in the car. Oh, while you're there, let's do the big brakes and front and rear sway bars and suspension. Well, I'm not going to disassemble the car and let it sit there and wait for those parts to come in.
Right.
Because we can't work around it. We can't move it. It also has a huge negative effect on the trajectory of that project.
Mm-hmm.
Because somebody's got to take it apart and then sit there and wait. And when the parts come in, and these days it could be 2 months, I don't know, then they got to get refocused on what they were working on to put it back together. As opposed to what we prefer to do, which is, all right, we look at the car, we do the inspection, you say you want the big brakes and sway bars, we're going to do the 5-speed. All right, we're going to move the whole car either into some of our on-site storage or, just kind of out of the way and order all the stuff. And when all the parts come in, then we're going to hammer it and we're going to go through it. We're going to get all the work done. Where we've been bitten on that strategy is once that work starts and you think you've got everything, and you get either the wrong part in the box.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Or a part, your rotors come in and they've only got 2 studs on them and you got to have one re-drilled or whatever, just
sure.
An inferior part that normally you would just send back and send me another one tomorrow, but that could take
that's another 6 weeks, or have a nice day.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Or it comes in and we take the thing apart and find out that, on further inspection, we've now deemed that your spindle is cracked. There's no way to see this before.
Right.
Right? So now we got to wait 6 more weeks for a spindle. And we try to do everything we can to look long and see past the parts in hand, hip bone connected to the leg bone. And
sure.
What else is going to get us here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that situation, we've had customers who are like, okay, so I'm talking about doing some rear disc brakes on my Corvette, but all of a sudden you're telling me, without even looking at the car, that I'm going to have to rebuild the rear control arms. And we say, yes, only because we know that every one of these Corvettes we've gotten into, they need those bearings and bushings changed.
Mm-hmm.
So we can order those parts, get them here, and if yours is the one that doesn't need it, we'll send it back. As opposed to, we get into it and go, oh, man, you know what?
Yeah. By the way.
Right. Here's another delay.
Mm-hmm.
So many of our customers that have come in with projects that have turned into larger things at their own motivation, many of them get it because they're dealing with the same thing in their own life and whatever their industry is or whatever. But the reality is that most people, they're concerned about their own car.
Yes.
It's that, you are, I am, everybody, sure, there's others there, but it's really, I brought my car and when are you going to work on it? and there's this perception of, you get this bad fear that the car's just sitting there and nobody's doing anything on it. Right. And it's collecting dust in the corner.
It's in body shop jail.
For sure.
Yeah.
And this comes from people having these negative experiences in the past.
Yeah.
Where all of a sudden they're waiting and it's like, hey, and so I try to put myself in other people's shoes and say, if I brought my Riv somewhere and said, hey, let's do the brakes on this thing. And they go, oh yeah, well, it's going to be 6 weeks out on parts. Oh man. Well, I don't want to hear that, but that guy doesn't want to tell me that either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I have nothing to gain by these projects taking longer.
Yeah, it's not like you hung up the phone and then you're wringing your hands going,
yeah, exactly.
I screwed another one. Yes.
Yeah, no, I've got zero to gain. And in fact, we have situations that we have to manage now because people are disappointed. And the last thing you want to do is disappoint somebody. So we've got a situation right now, and the customer, I feel terrible for this guy because he's a great guy and it's a great car, and he's been kind of dealt like all of these curveballs.
Oh man.
And as we go through this, he's got a very special car. It's a numbers matching car. It's got to be right. He brought it to us to make it right. It was restored once before and it was close, but it wasn't there. And part of what we're doing is this under hood restoration. Cool. And it didn't run great. It had some problems. So we do some diagnostics and some tuning on it. We can't really get it to run right. It's determined that this thing needs an engine build. Okay. Well, in our world, in our shop, you can't just take a very rare engine and drop it off at the parts store down the street and say, rebuild this.
Right.
You have to work with reputable specialists that know this stuff. So the problem with, and we have a lot of those partner shops all over the country that we send engines to that are specialists in different types of engines that are trusted. And what we do, we tell the customer, because we don't do machining in-house, but we'll tell them, hey, just so you know, this is going to be done by this particular shop. We're going to send it out. And we photo document the whole engine before it leaves the shop. And we record all the casting numbers and all the stampings and the identification numbers, because there's always a fear that is my engine going to come back?
Oh, yeah.
So we try to mitigate that by having as much, photographic and data on the engine before it leaves. And another thing that we like to do is rely on the machine shop to do the work, right? So we will pull an oil pan and maybe pull a couple caps off the main bearings, and look at the main bearings and see if they're scored or whatever, as an indicator that, this thing needs help, a compression check, a leak down check, your standard diagnostics. But we don't normally like to pull the intake, pull the heads, take the push rods out, take the pistons out.
Okay.
I want this together as much as possible.
Makes sense.
So that it leaves our shop basically as it came in, maybe disassemble a little bit with no alternator and, ancillaries.
Yeah.
But then the machine shop can bring it in, and they've got everything they need.
They can do all their discovery in the engine. They know what they're looking for. They see a mark there or some kind of witness mark there. They'll know what it is without it being unmolested.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And in today's world, you gotta make sure that everyone's covered, right? So that's an element of their responsibility and their liability as well. They got it complete. It's up to them to keep it complete.
Yes.
And the shops we work with understand this, and they appreciate that they're not getting something in boxes. People do that. I've done it myself. I brought a Buick motor and 3 trunk loads to a 24-hour parts store in Southern Cal once.
Awesome.
Yeah. And you know what? They did a hot tank and a hone overnight on a weekend.
Nice.
Because it was 1998 and not COVID times.
Yeah. It was the before times.
It was the before times by a long stretch. So here we go, and this engine goes out, and the other part of that discovery that you mentioned, it's a good word, is that as soon as the engine shop gets it, they're going to take it apart with their tools, at their speed, and their methods. And before any work happens, they're going to report back to us. We're going to have a conversation. What'd you find? And a lot of times they'll say, hey, this block is toast. We're not going to rebuild this, so you need to talk to your customer about a replacement. And maybe we have one or can help you, or you're going to get a crate or whatever. But in the case of this particular very rare engine, it had been built before, rebuilt, board, overboard, and there's not a lot of material to do this again.
Oof.
Right?
Yeah.
So your 24-hour overnight auto parts store would have said, yeah, we're just going to punch this to 60 thou and cross our fingers that we don't crack the block in the boring machine because we're thinning it out so much, which is happens to these things. Or they're going to say, we could sleeve it, and drive sleeves into this thing and break the block in half, you know.
Yeah. Sure.
Or you do what our particular shop that we work with did, and they said, let's get a custom piston. Let's bore this thing like, I don't know, I think it was like 8 or 10 thousandths over maybe. Just a little bit, just enough to clean up.
Clean it up. Yeah.
Give it good compression again.
Yeah.
And we'll design the piston with the piston manufacturer to be specific for this block. It's going to be the least invasive, the most conservative, the smartest way to do it.
Good.
Love it.
Yeah.
Run it past the customer. He says, great. You know, I like that plan. It lets my engine live on safely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, here's the thing there. Any good machine shop or any machine shop today, you cannot drop an engine off today and have them work on it today.
No.
Because they're backed up.
Yeah.
2 months, 6 months, whatever it is. Some race shops, years. And the same way, we don't blow a car apart and let it sit on the floor until the parts get here. Most, reputable engine shops, especially ones that do custom machining and race engines, they're focusing on the engine that's on their stand right now.
Right.
They cannot be distracted by numbers and measurements of other engines. They want this, whatever they're working on, to be dynamite because it has to win a race. It's got to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Once that one's done, we're going to move on to the next one.
Yep.
Right?
I mean, I totally get why you wouldn't take anything apart before you're going to work on it. I mean, what better place to have every part than to have it bolted all together? That way it won't get lost.
It won't get lost. And like you said, you can compare the piston to the wall and look for marks and, all that kind of stuff. So the other thing is that in the machinist world, you've got setup time. If you're going to do an overbore on a big block Chevy, you got to set the bore tool up, the torque plates, and, even your engine stand's got to be configured, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know this to be, I'm not saying that this is a story that is currently, happening, but I've known of this in the past where an engine shop will say, oh, well, it turns out I got 3 big block Chevys here. I got a big Ford and a small Ford, and I got 2 Mopars over there. So I'm going to do the 3 big block Chevys in a row so that I can be efficient and I don't have to reset the machines. And
makes sense. Yeah.
My mind is on big block Chevy.
Sure.
And then I'm going to do the 2 Mopars, and then I'm going to hit the 2 Fords, right? So their timeline is kind of, and you kind of want it to be on the machinist preference, because that generally means that's how it's going to get done right.
Yes.
If you are kicking and screaming saying, I need this by the weekend, I don't care what's on your machines.
Yeah.
It isn't going to go well.
Yeah. You can't bully that guy into doing that. You're right. It won't go well.
Right. And especially if you're dealing with something, again, that's special and that's not really replaceable, So you've got that concept. Well, the next thing is, all right, yeah, thanks for dropping yours off. I got to get these 4 out of here, and then I'll get to yours. Well, then that comes apart, and then we find out, oh, we got to order bearings. We got to order these custom pistons, blah, blah, blah. So it might have sat there for a month before they touched it.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be however long for the parts to put it back together. In the meantime, the machinist can do the machine work once the plan's agreed upon and it's approved and all that jazz.
Yes.
So here we go again. Now I'm a middleman in this standpoint because we sent this thing out. Everybody knows it got sent out. It's not a surprise.
Right.
But after a month, the customer calls or we reach out to the customer because we try to do two-way as much as possible. And hey, how's the engine coming along? Well, the machinist is hopefully gonna crack it open this week. You mean they haven't yet? Well, unfortunately not, and it's because of these reasons. And well, I was kind of hoping this thing would get done in my lifetime. What's the deal here? Right? Yeah, I get that.
In my lifetime. I love it.
But, time matters. And
sure.
It's a thing. You have to be considerate of this. So why didn't this happen? Well, you start to share the story, and guess what? You're going to need these custom pistons. Hey, great idea. Well, the piston manufacturer says they're 10 weeks out. Okay. So now I got to tell a customer, remember that month that went by? Well, now we need 10 more weeks.
Yeah. We need a couple of more of those. Yeah.
A couple more of those, right? So you can, I bet you can guess where this goes next, because then the machinist, we're on top of the machinist. He's on top of the piston manufacturer. The piston manufacturer comes back and says, yeah, remember when I told you 10 weeks? So it's not. It's going to be 12. So the machinist is like, oh, man, well, now he's got to juggle his work strategy because he can't get the parts. He tells us, oh, yeah, it's going to be 12 weeks now. We get back with the customer, and the customer's like, you're kidding me. What is the problem? Well, the problem is all these things and manufacturing, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, if an engine shop says, sure, I can tear that apart right now and put it back together this weekend, I'm not sure you want to go there because they're not busy.
Yeah, exactly. They're probably not busy for a reason.
Yeah, it's an empty restaurant,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can get a great table, but whoa, what's going to happen 24 hours from now?
Yeah, I'm going to get the salmonella and fries. So the next thing is, and this kind of did happen, the report out of the piston shop was, guys, we're on kind of an indefinite hold. I'm not sure when we're going to get these.
Oh no.
Okay. So what do you do? One of the most annoying phrases in the world is I don't know.
Yes, I agree.
And to tell a customer, hey, so now we're 10, 12 weeks into my engine. I haven't seen anything. Where is it? Well, it's at the machine shop. How come it's not done? Well, we're waiting for parts. Where are the parts? Well, I don't know. I mean, that doesn't fly.
No.
Right? But the flip side is I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going to make up a number.
Right. Or keep stringing them along. Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 2 more weeks. I don't know what it is, right? I literally I don't know. I don't have the information. I know the story behind what's going on, but I don't physically know. And it conjures up, one of my dad's favorite sayings. And of course, he was a police officer with that mentality that a lot of police officers have. And when I was a kid, I'll never forget it. I broke his... remember when the Sony Watchman TV first came out?
Yeah.
The little portable TV? He had one of those. I broke the antenna off it. And I just kind of put it back because I was a little kid. I don't know. And he comes home and he's like, hey, who broke my antenna? I don't know. Well, who would know? That was the standard thing. Who would know? I don't know.
It certainly wasn't me, Dad.
Yeah, well, I eventually copped to it, and there was a whole lesson learned there. But so I'm trying to take the accountability and not say I don't know, but I've actually had to tell people this drawn out story of this is why I cannot give you a date. Please understand that it's not because nobody's working on it or it's delinquent or somebody's put something in front of it. It's because it's a quality part handpicked by this company to do this work. So a lot of times, well, can't you get pistons somewhere else? Can't you call somebody else? Well, it's possible, right? You might find yourself at the end of a 12-week line there too.
Yeah.
You might find that they can't make that custom piston. You also take the personal relationship out of the picture. So the engine builder is working with that piston company because he's worked with them forever, knows them personally. Their kids play soccer together. So if something isn't right or you need more help, you got that relationship. If you start from scratch somewhere else, you don't have that.
Right.
And I have that same relationship with the engine builder. I can tell him, dude, what's going on? And he'll tell me. There's no BS. But getting back to the customer, now it feels like, I don't know what's going on. So it's our challenge to continually provide updates, but provide updates that say something, because nobody wants an update of nothing. You want an update that something's happening. So the question, often comes up, well, while you're waiting for the engine, can we do this other stuff? Which then harkens back to what I said before. We don't want to blow this thing apart and interrupt any potential efficiencies we're going to get by bringing the engine back. And the specific example is this engine has to be a certain color when it's reinstalled. And so do a lot of the parts that bolt onto it. They're all the same color. Right. But it's a proper restoration, which means we had to know that some of these parts were assembled and then the engine was painted. So there's a hose and some clamps and some brackets that are all painted at the same time.
Okay.
Assembled, right?
Yeah.
So you hired us to do this right. So I can't do it wrong to make it look right, because it ain't going to be right.
Right.
Just to kind of usher it along, because that's not why you brought it to us. But I get that you're impatient. I guess because I am too. Yeah. Again, I have nothing to gain by this taking longer than we all think it should. So then you have the even if you can talk to them and let them know, hey, this is the reasons why. And we try to provide 100% transparency. Here's the number of the engine shop. Here's the number of the piston company. Call them up. Feel free to ask. Put pressure on them if you want, but I don't know if it's going to help. But sure, I'm not guarding all that like, oh no,
right.
You can't.
Don't you dare.
Yeah, because that's not how it is. It's very important for me to understand. The people understand that we're in this boat together. It's not something, any different. But then in the customer's world, he's got his friends, his wife. Hey, where's your car? Hey, what's going on with that motor?
Hey, dude, when's it going to be done?
Yeah,
I told you should have taken it to my buddy.
Yep. What are they doing over there?
Yeah.
Oh, man. And the best one is all of a sudden here comes social media.
Oh, no.
And it's...
I like the before times when that didn't exist.
Well, it's got its place.
Yeah, it does have its place. You're right.
And I get, it's a place to share positive and negative feelings and whatnot, but it's a chance for everybody to pile on.
Yeah,
and that's what they do.
Oh yeah.
Right. And even if I had the greatest steak in the world. And I said, this steak was okay. I'm going to have 100 people saying how bad it sucked. I'm not going to have 100 people saying, you're right, it is great. Nobody comes to anybody's defense on social media. They don't know the whole story. They just, like you said, I should have taken it to my buddy. So you got to manage that too. And at the end of the day, where we are now is that we're hearing promises that production is starting to come back and there's been this in this country, this unemployment, increase of benefits that they've been paying out to help people. And there's a strong argument that said that kind of deterred people from getting certain jobs. And that faucet is turning off, kind of this time. So we're hoping that more people become available in the workplace to get more stuff done. And we could get this done. And interestingly, all along this process, so the work that we're doing in our shop isn't in any way negatively affected by anything other than the time. It's not like there's sub-quality work happening because it's taking longer. It's just we're waiting for the damn parts. And the engine shop is the same way. And everybody's maintaining their quality standards. So time, though, is such a major component of the perception of quality and value. If something went too quickly, it isn't good. If it went too long, it isn't good.
Right.
There's a sweet spot of how long people think things should take.
and it's a different time for every individual.
For sure. Yeah. Now, the thing that is a little disheartening, and where I said in the beginning that I'm not blaming all of this on COVID, but COVID is the root. I have been following, obviously, the auto industry, and we've all seen these stories of the thousands of vehicles that are not ready for sale because they're missing chips.
Right, they can't get these chips. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's causing the used car market to skyrocket because everybody wants to sell a car. Every dealer needs cars to sell.
Totally, right? And and some of the companies were getting kind of innovative with how they're managing this. And Ford, for example, and General Motors are selling some of their cars without the LCD screens or LED screens in the dash.
Really?
They're basically making a lower model car, and they say, whenever this comes in, we'll install it. But there's a whole bunch of chips that make up this display. We don't have.
Huh.
Or Honda, for example, is only giving out one key.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because all the keys have transmitters and, chips in those, and they can't get them. So rather than halt everything, they just give it out. And as soon as the second one comes available, they mail it to you. So But they're starting to drill down and find out that, getting back to our analogy of the construction business, that production is back online. And prices are coming down, and the supply is there. So what happened? Well, they're starting to catch up with those orders. They got people back to work. The plants are running, blah, blah, blah. But the semiconductor industry is not. In fact, it's getting worse.
Oh, wow.
So let's look at what's inside a semiconductor. And the two major components that are causing the problem they can't get are these ceramic circuit boards and some of the more precious metals that go into the actual integrated circuits and semiconductors themselves. Well, why can't you get those? Because everything else is just starting to kind of come back. Well, you can't get those because the people in China that supply them all have realized that if you can't get them, you're going to pay a lot more for them. Right? So now we've got a market force that is going along for the ride of this natural disaster and capitalizing on it, and it's crushing people like you and me, and especially small business people that are just trying to get their stuff done and I don't have any recourse. Again, I can't go to a custom piston store in Walmart in aisle 5 and get these 15,000 over forged, specially designed pistons today. But that, these manufacturing plants, in their efforts to ramp up and increase production, they can't get the equipment because the chips are in the equipment. Oh, yeah, right. And it just goes in all directions, and it's like, oh my gosh, and my head is just pounding. So goes 180. So what do you do, right? And I think the most important thing is to maintain the transparency. So we've always maintained an open door policy. Any person who brings us a car that we're working on, you are free to come visit the car anytime you want. Don't need to make an appointment. You can just show up whenever you want. We suggest if there's a particular person that you want to talk to, call ahead and find out if they're going to be there. I'm doing a lot of traveling right now, and it's vacation season, so some people aren't there. So, but it's not like in some of those body shops with these fill-in work where you call and then they unmothball your car and put it in the middle of the room and make it look like they're working on it. That's not the case. The other thing is we do maintain our photo albums, and the photo albums are updated. And if nothing's happened for a little while on your photo album, it's because we've been waiting for something. But we have Joe at the front desk, who's our sales and customer relation guy, and Brian, who's our parts guy. And those two guys are on the phone with people all day long. Call Joe and say, Joe, take the shop phone and go get me a picture of my car. And he will walk right out and go, bam, and send it back to you in minutes.
Cool.
Anytime.
Cool.
Right? So just trying to get that message out there that there's a reason why people choose to work with us. And it's because of all these factors that are built in to help them have a good experience, even though right now we're all kind of struggling against things that are not in our control.
Yeah. Well, I mean, communication is paramount in times like these, and you guys do a great job of communicating. People will take a lot of bad news as long as they are communicated with effectively, as long as they feel like you have their best interests at heart. So I think a great thing that you guys do is you don't just work for a customer, or do you work for a customer? You try to partner with that customer because you guys you have a common goal to build a great car, to build a car that customer wants. And by partnering, they feel like they're invested as much as you are. And so I think that goes a long way in fostering a superior client experience.
Yeah, and it's a great way to put it. And it's not easy, and it doesn't always go that way. But what I like to envision is, I've been to enough high profile car shows in my life where a very expensive car, big custom or a pro touring car, whatever, is like getting unveiled. In fact, we've done this. Unveiled cars, and when the owner's standing right there next to the builder, and they're like, "We did this."
Yeah.
Yes. It's the owner provided half the project, the builder provided the other half. Together, it happened. And that's what I love. And that's the greatest feeling when it's like, yeah, this is your desire and maybe a shared vision and your resources and our resources, and this is the result. And when somebody starts to go, hey, how come you're not working on this thing? It's you got to figure out a way to communicate that sentiment that, like you said, we got a common goal. Again, I've got nothing to gain. I only have challenges to overcome by this stuff taking long.
Yes. Yeah, we are not going to sacrifice the product we put out just to rush it along and change the scope of work to put in inferior materials or products, because that's not what you want. So
Correct.
It just takes a little bit longer, and we all have to be patient with this.
And believe me, we are wide open to discussing alternatives and compromises and whatever. And so for this particular example of this, car with the shop or the engine in the shop, if there was another one of those motors laying here, that we could drop in and the guy could drive it for the rest of the summer, sure, I would do that. But I don't have one.
Right.
And then we get back to what you just said. The reason why I came here is because he wanted it to be as day one under the hood, and that wouldn't be it,
Right.
So it's interesting, and this is stuff that when you go into business, most people, where's the training? Who knows that this is going to happen? Nobody.
Right.
Right. Okay, chapter 8. Turn to your business book, chapter 8. This is what do you do a year and a half into a pandemic when the Chinese decide to regulate the availability of everything that touches your world? I'm sorry, what?
That's not in my book.
Right. Yeah. So this topic, it's walking a fine line, and I don't want to come across like I'm complaining about anything.
Right.
What I'm trying to do is share where we have been with certain projects. And I'll tell you, recently we have had the flip side where we've talked to a customer and said, okay, just so you know, these parts take months to get, and set that expectation, at least that it could be. In some ways, it could be open-ended. We don't even know. But then they show up 2 days later, and you're like, oh, yeah.
Right on.
Here we go. And we've got another customer in the shop right now with a Corvette who his project grew in scope before we even started on it.
Really?
Because waiting for a big-ticket item, waiting for a TKX 5-speed to be built for this car. And while he's waiting, he's like, well, what if we did this? And what if we do that? And, so we just got to all, try to get as many of the parts on order as much as possible.
Yeah.
So that we got a big mountain of great parts that when the last one shows up, we go boom, and this thing, it happens. It all comes together. So,
yeah, best to make all those might as well things before you're too deep into a project, where the change orders become counterproductive to all the work you've been doing already.
But some of it you don't know.
Right. Well, I get it. I mean, you can't, like you said earlier, you can't anticipate that cracked spindle.
Yeah, you didn't know that brake line was pinched on your GTO.
No, absolutely
until
not.
We're trying to drop the motor in. It's like, oh, man.
Yeah, so let's get some brake line and have the guy who's never bent brake line before make a new brake line.
Yeah, hey, it worked, right?
It did work.
And then, sometimes we have to be conscious of the fact that maybe a car is coming in for an aluminum radiator, whatever. And we do our basic safety inspection, and the technicians aren't really focusing on the rear gear ratio because it's here for a radiator.
Sure.
But the customer had a gear set in the back of his mind and didn't volunteer that information. So we do the radiator, and then it's, hey, while it's there, I'd like a different gear set. Well, if I knew that you wanted the gear set, we could have ordered that before we started the radiator and made it one trip up the lift, do both of them, and one trip off the lift, and it's done. But a lot of people, for various reasons, if they've never worked with it before, they want to know how it goes.
Sure. I get that. Yeah.
Or they want to see what's left in the budget. Or they're still doing research, or, whatever. There's a million different reasons. So I can't expect somebody to come to me and say, well, this is my dream car, but I can only afford, this segment to start with. But if you have the ability to share what your vision is, we might be able to make recommendations to say, oh, yeah, well, if you want a set of, brand X wheels, you're 3 months out. So before we go down that, you got 3 months of waiting time. Is there something else we can do in the meantime or whatever,
Yeah.
And again, we don't grow the projects. The customers do. They everybody likes doing this stuff. They want the most car that they can get.
Yeah.
And so from a business standpoint, that part's kind of nice for us because chances are it's going to be more work than what was initially anticipated. But that also has the effect of changing the plan of the shop because this one came in for a radiator and now it's here for full suspension, but there was somebody waiting after him that's going to come in, and now we got to tell that guy,
a couple more days or a couple more weeks or a couple more months,
or my radiator company just said I don't know when it's going to be. So then it affects going out of the shop as well and down the street, so
man,
it's
a lot to juggle.
Time. It is. And I still wouldn't, I would not rather be doing anything else. This is what we do, and I enjoy it.
You don't want to be working for the chemical company again?
No, those days are long gone.
Yeah, too bad.
I'm glad I worked there, but no. And part of me looks at these as challenges to solve, problems to solve.
Yes,
which we do a lot. We solve a lot of problems, and if we can figure out a way to handle it and then apply it to everybody else, then we won't have that challenge with anybody else, because we figured it out. And that's kind of what I enjoy. But at the end of the day, we're not a giant corporation. We don't have plants all over the world. It's a couple handfuls of guys in a small shop in Red Bud, Illinois. We can only do what we can do, and we do it well because everybody cares. And
that's huge.
That's the bottom line,
Right on. Well said, sir. Well said.
All right. Well, hopefully, we can make some sound to wake everybody up for the trivia question.
Yeah, man. Let's do this. Woo! All right. All right. So, Kev, I asked you what brand of car had the cylinders numbered starting from the firewall and moving forward.
Yes.
And at first you tried to go with Honda, because I think you just were disgusted with that question.
No, I was just thinking four-cylinder.
Yeah. Then you landed on the MG, our friends at Morris Garages, in a 1275cc MG midget. And I cannot believe this, but that is not correct.
I know it's not correct. Nice acting there. You get the Oscar for the episode.
Oh, I've been waiting all episode for this.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So actually the correct answer is our good friends at Saab.
Ah, man.
Did that. In fact, it's funny because their engines, their longitudinally mounted engine, had all of the accessories mounted on that back part of the engine, like alternator, power steering pump, was sandwiched between the engine and the firewall. And my buddy had an old like 83 Saab 900 turbo that was set up that way, and we had to replace the alternator on it once, and that was the biggest nightmare of my life.
Okay.
Trying to replace that.
The heck on earth would you do that?
I don't know. The transaxle was, it was almost like a Tornado kind of a setup because it was front wheel drive.
So it's front drive, but longitudinal, and then everything is up against the firewall.
Exactly.
Born from jets, right?
Yes.
Jets aren't like that.
Yeah, no, jets are not like that.
Jets don't have any of that.
Nope. No, they don't.
Man, well, that's a great question. We have not yet had a Saab question on this show.
All right. Well, thank you, Trevor.
Or is my neighbor... So I had a neighbor that had a 900 turbo. Is that what it was?
Yeah, 900 turbo.
900. And he had like a... What was the end of the line before they became the 9000? I think there was an overlap, right, where you could get a 900 and a 9000.
Yes. Yeah, I used to have a 9000, a Saab 9000 turbo.
You had some weird cars, man.
I did. Oh, yeah. And I loved every one of them. I loved every one. Every oddball car I've ever owned has been great.
So here's a quick funny story, right? So my neighbor is into those cars, and he buys this 900 turbo, and it's like a 89.
Okay.
Were they still making them then?
Yeah, absolutely.
Towards the end of the 900 series.
Before they became the 9.3 when GM took over.
Yes.
Yeah.
So still all Swede, and it was a damn good-looking car. It was like a gunmetal gray metallic.
Yes.
With, I'm going to say it, had black leather seats, and it had those European, articulating seats that were lightweight, but they were comfortable, and I think it still had the ignition key on the floor. Right,
and the center console between the two seats, absolutely.
And this one I think had two-tone carpet or interior, so like the headliner and everything was like a light fawn.
Oh, nice.
Cream color, but the seats were black, so some of those cars had like what I will say some pretty weird color schemes, but this one was really good looking, and it was a turbo car, and he thought that he was like, I don't know who the Swedish equivalent of Mario Andretti would be, but he thought he was that guy, right?
Okay.
And where I grew up near O'Hare Airport, there was this cloverleaf on the on-ramps of 90 and Mannheim Road.
Yeah.
Kennedy, you know where it's at. It's kind of near where the Muscle Car and Corvette National Show is in Rosemont. So if you hit the cloverleaf and enter the right pedal, if you will, the right leaf, all the turns decrease in radius. So like the first one is like the wide one, the next one's a little bit tighter, and then a little tighter, and all the time.
Gotcha.
It's just the way they designed it. It's kind of weird. And that was a little bit of a proving ground for us. We'd go out there and, late
it's
at
your
night.
skid pad.
And go do laps at 90 Mannheim.
Mm-hmm.
Well, another friend of mine at the time bought a 95 1LE showroom stock Camaro.
Oh, wow.
6-speed.
Very cool.
This was an LT1.
Yeah.
With a 6-speed, big white Hurst shift ball. But the 1LE cars were for that showroom stock SCCA class where they had performance suspension in them already, no options. It was a stripper, factory road race car. So he's like, hey, let's go out, 90 Mannheim and set some records with this Camaro. And my other neighbor's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to bring the Saab and I'll show you guys, right?
Show you boys what's up.
I'll show you how we do this thing Swedish chef style.
Yeah. Yes.
So the Camaro does it, and the Saab does it, and the Camaro does it, and the Saab does it. And pretty soon the Camaro's doing it like 79 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour through really hauling ass. And that's when the Saab met the infield in a power box.
Whoopsie daisies.
Oh, it was terrible.
Oh, man.
It was fixed. He got it fixed. He wrecked that car like 5 times. He kept wrecking that car. And we kept telling him, dude, it's a front wheel drive. Front wheel drive cars are not road race cars.
No, they're not. Well, I treated my 9000 like it's a road race car too. I used to autocross it with my old Volkswagen Club, and I actually wrecked that car once too.
There you go.
Just blew the whole front end up once. Oh my goodness!
Turned the wheel, it just went straight.
Well, I was going through the toll booth, and I was going about 60 miles an hour. And it was like an iPass booth. Before they had the iPass lanes, the big wide open road tolling.
Okay, yeah.
And I was cruising through the booth, and I looked away for a second, and I looked back, and everything was stopped in front of me. Oh, yeah,
I've been there.
And I slammed on the brakes as hard as I could, and I didn't make it. I just plowed into this Caprice taxi cab.
Oh, man.
Both my airbags blow off. The whole front end is just exploded. Coolant flying everywhere.
Yeah.
This Caprice had a black mark on its bumper. And that, and I'm not kidding, that was it.
Yeah.
That was it.
And that was already there, by the way.
Yeah, it was probably already there. So I was a young kid. I didn't know what to do. So I'm like, oh, gosh. So I called a body shop. I was like, yeah, I just wrecked my car. Can you fix it? And they said, is it drivable? I'm like, yeah, I think so. So I put the hood back down as best I could. I drove to this body shop with the airbags in my lap. I roll in there. And the guy says, like, what the hell are you doing? This car's not drivable. I said, well, I drove it.
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you.
You don't know the cue ball, man.
That's right,
I
man.
can drive anything.
I get things done. Oh man, that was brutal. But it wasn't total. They ended up fixing the car. It was like $6,000 in damage.
Wow.
And I drove it again. But my gosh, it was terrible.
Yeah, scary situation when all of a sudden I had the situation where I was following a guy, admittedly a little bit too close, and he moves over one lane and everybody in front of him was stopped.
Oh man!
And I didn't see through the car, and I was driving a '75 Plymouth Scamp. And
Scamp?
It had front disc brakes, and
wow.
we're coming back from a swap meet. We had a trunk full of parts and everything. And the only thing that saved us was the rumble strip in the pavement, you know?
Yeah.
Because we were skidding towards this stack of stopped cars, and we skidded up across the rumble strip, and it just went and this cloud of tire smoke passes us.
Gee, I wonder where that came from.
Yeah, there's three of us in the car. We all looked at each other. Nobody said a word for like 10 miles.
Oh my gosh.
But I'll tell you what, the Scamp is getting some love right now. Our friend Steve Strope at Pure Vision is building a Scamp.
Really?
Yeah, for Bob Florine at ARP. So
right on.
It's going to be a SEMA reveal car. I don't know about a SEMA reveal event car, but it will be revealed at the SEMA show.
This SEMA show?
They're coming up, yeah.
Oh, yeah, get some pictures of that. I'd love to see that.
Scamp.
All right,
my
Scamp.
friend.
So what say you for this trivia?
Oh, right.
Yeah, we got one more.
We do. Okay.
Dutchman panel. Come on.
I thought we were done with all
No, man. That was one great tangent, I got to tell you.
Damn, I'm sorry.
Legendary.
All right. So you picked number 5 on our triangle of trivia. And the question was, what is a Dutchman panel? And you said a Dutchman, let's see, what did you say? The C-pillar area from the rear part of the side window to the back of the roof where it meets the rear window. It came from the Dutch.
This AKA sail panel.
Right. Close. The Dutchman panel is the metal body piece between the rear window and the trunk. It's that filler panel.
Oh, man.
So your Dutchman actually kind of attaches to the actual Dutchman.
It kind of does. Oh, I was in the neighborhood.
And the term, I guess, was derived from a Dutchman's repair, where a piece of cement would spall and dip, causing a deformation in the stone. So the Dutchman repair involves cutting out the damaged stone and the keystones next to it, and a piece of new stone is prepared to fit into the slot. So that piece, I guess, either has a keystone kind of shape, or it gets slipped in between the others, and for some reason it has become the Dutchman's panel. And it's not used around here, but I heard somebody more in the eastern part of the U.S. say that. And I thought, what the heck is a Dutchman panel? But there you go.
Okay, so the panel from that touches the back window goes all the way to the trunk lid.
Yep.
Okay, that's a big Dutchman panel.
On your car it is.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And probably has a few holes in it.
It's got some horse damage.
That's right. Mr. Ed was here.
That's right. Wilbur. Yeah. All right.
All right. Well, I'm glad you reminded me to get that out of the way. So
you betcha.
Okay. Well, that's all I got now.
Yeah, same. Oh, quick shout out. My good friend, Mr. Anthony LaPuma, who's a new listener to the show.
Right on.
Yeah, he just messaged me, told me he listened to our latest episode, and he really dug it. So thank you, Anthony.
Well, let's hope he doesn't listen to this one.
Welcome to the family.
No, that's cool. We appreciate that. It's always nice to get some feedback, especially when people like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I like it. I forget people are listening sometimes. I think it's just you.
Same, yeah, exactly. We're just shooting the breeze.
Venting to you about it.
And it's like, damn, Pistons won't come in. I don't know when they're coming in.
I'm telling you. All right. So I guess on that note, the takeaway is, go easy on your suppliers, because you might not know the whole story on that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's all I got. So. Yeah. If you dug this show, give us a like, a thumbs up, a subscribe, whatever you got. We are going to be, we have launched our new website.
Oh, yeah, I meant to mention that. The new and improved V8speedshop.com.
Yeah, and V8radio.com is going to point right to a spot on V8 Speed Shop, which is what I've wanted forever. So we have the V8 TV world of videos. We have our Muscle Car of the Week world of videos. We have our V8 Speed Shop of cars we work on, and we have V8 Radio. Now they're all on the same web space.
Nice.
And it's under the V8 Speed Shop umbrella, but when you go there, you can hit drop downs and access all that content all in the same
Yeah,
spot.
it's a clean site. It's easy to navigate. The pictures come up real nice. It's easy to go through everything. I really dig it.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Yeah.
I processed to date, and I still have a couple more cars that we have worked on that are not in the photo galleries, but 159,000 photographs.
Oh, slacker. Gee
Yeah.
whiz.
There's like 1,400 videos. I mean, there's a lot
Wow.
to do there. Of course, the 110 or so episodes of V8 Radio, they're all there. So,
Nice.
yeah, if you got a few minutes to kill, you'll find a way to do it. Just go to v8speedsshop.com.
Dig it. Dig
Yeah.
it.
All right. Well, that's cool. Thanks
Yeah,
for the session.
You bet, man. Anytime. Happy to help.
Yeah, right on.
I was
feel much
getting
better.
asked when we're going to have a new episode coming out. I said, I think
Yeah.
we're going to record tonight. I think we should have it out by the weekend. Hold your
Yeah,
horses, people.
We'll get this out quickly. I know I've been traveling a lot. I'm off to Phoenix to go MC the Off-Road Expo this weekend, and then the Four-Wheel Jamboree in Indy, the 40th anniversary the weekend after that,
Nice.
and then a couple
Phoenix,
more.
back to the scene of the crime.
That's it, but I can't get it again.
Good. All right.
That's good.
Live it up, man, then.
Yes, I will return healthy.
Good.
All
Thank
right,
you.
man.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, me too.
I bet. That was a rough go.
It was a rough go. So for Mr. Mike Cueball Clarke, I'm Kevin Oeste. This is VA Radio reminding you to keep the shiny side up and keep it under 100 most of the time.
There you go.